is January 2024, and I'm pretty excited because we can expect within the next week for Game Informer to finally drop that gameplay footage that they've been holding on to since late December a couple weeks ago. They were invited to Square Enix in Japan and able to play an earlier build of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, access some other gameplay missions, and they collected a lot of data for that. And on top of that, they were able to interview the devs, do a rapid fire questions video, and a bunch of other stuff that they did previously for other games, including Resident Evil 4 Remake. And of course, it's important to note, spoiler warning going ahead, there will be spoilers for the original Final Fantasy VII story, and also potential spoilers for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And if you've been avoiding that, feel free to click away. No worries. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is releasing in about 8-9 weeks from now, recording this video, and even though that time may fly for some, it's going slow for others. So I fully understand and get it if you don't want to tune into this right now. On their website, since about December 17th, which is when their cover reveal was, actually December 19th, my bad, they've been releasing things about pretty much daily. Essentially, they did one big article and then broke it all down into minor, smaller articles, piece by piece, in case you wanted to read it that way. I'll be linking this below in the description for you to check it out because it's completely free, and you should totally do that. They kept it going, and honestly, I've been reading through these, and it's not really been super important to check out all these ones, the ones that came out after Christmas and stuff, because they were just further elaborating on things that we already talked about in the big article. However, this one for today, in my opinion, has a different context and a different meaning than what I originally read the first time around, specifically with this headline: Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the expanded scene the developers can't wait for players to see. But of course, all the combat stuff, I got you guys covered, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss out on any of that. I got you all covered with the latest. Now, with that being said, let's jump into this article. Though the conversation started about Aerith's arc and Sephiroth's role in the middle entry, it was clear the developers were excited to tell me about a specific scene that takes place in the Coral Prison portion of the game. When the remake project was first decided, we already felt that if we were going to take on this series, it's imperative that we depict the characters much more deeply and go into more depth in approaching them. Nomura says, not only Aerith's arc for Rebirth, but even other characters like Dyne. For example, I really wanted to show in a more detailed way for Rebirth. There's a scene where I truly wanted to cry when I see it. Oh yes, that scene with Dyne is a great one, Hamaguchi chimes in. It might be one of the top most wonderful scenes. For those who haven't played FF7, Dyne is a childhood friend of Barret and the biological father of Marlene. After a Shinra attack that wipes out much of their town, Dyne and Barret lose an arm while attempting to flee. Dyne falls off of a cliff, assuming Dyne died in the fall. Barret continues on and discovers that Marlene actually survived the Shinra attack, and he takes her into his care. Years later, Cloud and his party, including Barret, find themselves in Coral Prison, only to learn and find out that Dyne is not only still alive, but he's now the boss of Coral Prison, and he has the same surgery as Barret, replacing his missing arm with a machine gun. The two reunite in an emotional scene that is likely even more emotional through the new depiction in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. The way that Dyne kind of like fell off the cliff and Barret was holding him, I think Barret was holding him with his right arm, and Dyne was holding up to Barret with his left arm. When that happened, they both lost their arms. Barret had to replace his right arm with a gun, and Dyne replaces his left arm with a gun. It's kind of symbolic, the fact that Barret and Dyne's arms, right and left, are essentially mirrors of each other. And there's a little shot and a photo of Dyne right here that we can see, which I still think looks like Brian Fury. Barret and Dyne's moment has always been a very favorite of mine in Final Fantasy VII OG. I think I would probably put Red 13 and Seto's, like after the G Cave? G Cave? G Cave? What do you guys say? After that cave portion right there, that always hit pretty hard for me because I used Red a lot in the party. I don't know, for some reason that story just really gripped me. And of course, Dyne and Barret have a wonderful story depiction as well. And it's a lot of fans' favorites. And I want to hear from you guys. What do you think? What is your favorite, most impactful moment in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth that you are excited for and hoping to see? No, for real, drop a comment on that. I want to read everything that you guys have to say. Within Rebirth, the characters that we all have come to know and love are depicted quite fully and in depth, Nomura says. For me, the character from Coral Prison was quite memorable. I'm not sure if players remember him, but everywhere players go, there will be characters like that who we remember from the original game that are depicted in more detail. Surprised he didn't use Dyne's name there. Maybe he did, and maybe that got lost in translation. That's also another thing to consider with these articles too. There could be some translation issues here and there, but it's kind of funny that he was like, I'm not sure if players will remember this, or I'm not sure if players remember this character. It's like Nomura's been saying that this entire like Game Informer interview and other portions that he's spoken in. While Nomura loves that scene, Kitase was surprised the original version, as drafted by scenario writer Kazushige Nojima, made it into the final game. When we first received that scenario from Nojima-san, specifically that Corel prison scene that Nomura-san mentioned, I initially thought we could cut this out or change it. Kitase said, I thought certain scenes should be or could be cut, but hearing Nomura-san and Hamaguchi-san's opinions on how they want to keep this, I conceded. But when you see it all come together, the final product and that scene, especially the dying scene, I think, wow, this is amazing. It's crying worthy. I feel glad it's in there. Okay, I made a tweet talking about this yesterday, talking about like how for a lot of fans that have played the OG and played Remake, a lot of them shift or look at Nomura as a scapegoat, so to speak, blaming him for all the crazy changes and the ending of the game and the way things are, the way things are. Yes, he is or was the director of that title. It was a 4-man co-direction like unit. They said this many times over that all 4 of them had to collectively shut down ideas, approve things, and whatnot. So clearly, it's also come up multiple times that Kitase is not the first time either. Kitase has mentioned of wanting to remove things, cut things, or skip over things. He even said that for the world map in the previous article, and that he agreed that Hamaguchi them did a great job on bringing the world map to life, and he's glad that they did that. He's saying the same thing here with this dying scene and probably a bunch of other stuff too, but it's no secret to that. I mean, originally he wanted to kill off all the main characters, or all the characters that you don't bring with the party to the Return to Midgar portion of the OG game. And Nomura and the other team members had to stop him, essentially. Like, don't do that. Like, continue with the characters around. We already got enough death. I just think it's interesting because I get a lot of comments on it, and I get it. Like, Nomura's storytelling is not that great. I was watching actually a Max video recently where he was like how Nomura's storytelling in fighting action-based scenes is top-notch, probably the best of the best. And I agree with him 100% there. But when it does come to Nomura doing, let's say like his own thing, specifically with stories, a lot of it can be convoluted. Not hating on Kingdom Hearts or anything like that, but it does get a little wild in that story. And if you're a fan of it, you're a fan of it. I used to be a fan of Kingdom Hearts as well. I played 1 and 2 around the time when they came out, and I still love those games. I just really could not get into the other ones after that, and I've tried. I mean, I purchased the 1.5, 2.5, and 3 multiple times, and probably will again for a legacy playthrough that we eventually will do when Kingdom Hearts 4 drops, because I desperately want to get back into it, guys. I promise you, I really do. It's just been tough, man. I'm really glad Nomura spoke up, and Hamaguchi as well. I know there's a lot of people that are kind of confused on this, saying, oh, they're talking about the original Final Fantasy VII. I don't think that's the case. I mean, like I said, with translation issues and errors, it very well could mean he's talking about the original draft, right? He's talking about the original draft of the script scenario that Nojima-san wrote for Rebirth, because he even mentions right here Hamaguchi's name. And anybody that knows, I mean, Hamaguchi was not part of the original development team. Hell, he wasn't even a part of Square Enix when the original Final Fantasy VII was being developed. So that definitely is not the case. He's talking about this for Rebirth. So let's reread it again. When we first received that scenario from Nojima-san, specifically that Corel prison scene that Nomura-san mentioned, I initially thought we could cut this out or change it, Kitase says. I thought certain scenes could be cut, but hearing Nomura-san and Hamaguchi-san's opinions on how they want to keep this, I conceded. But when you see it all come together, the final product in that scene, especially dying scene, I think, wow, it's amazing, it's crying worthy. I feel glad that it's in there. Specifically, they're talking about Rebirth right there. But this portion right here, where Kitase was surprised the original version as drafted by scenario writer Kazushige Nojima made it into the final game. I think he's talking about the original draft for that specific scenario that they're writing for Rebirth. Remember, scenario planning and stuff comes very early into a game's planning phase. Maybe Kitase thought that they were going to cut it, and when he saw it again in the final aspect, he was surprised to see it, and then deeply was like, okay, I'm moved. This is it. I'm keeping it in there. And I don't know, I'm just a little skeptical because, again, I keep saying translation stuff. I just find it very weird that Kitase would think to cut Barrett's defining backstory moment. I feel like that is just so blasphemous. Am I the only one that feels that way? The disrespect, if that's the case, my man. All in all, Hamaguchi is a blessing. Unfortunately, I did not have the opportunity to see this scene featuring Dyne during my demo, but from the way Square Enix's seasoned developers praised it, I'm even more excited to get my hands on the final product to experience it. Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth arrives on PlayStation 5 on February 29th. And that's the end of that article right there. Shout out to Brian Shea and the rest of the Game Informer team for just bringing this all together and doing this. I'm really excited to see their actual gameplay footage. They didn't really get to do story stuff. It was mostly side mission things that they detailed, specifically like the side mission with Red 13, Cloud, and Kate Sith, involving Kyrie and her lighthouse, and also the new town that's been implemented into the game called the Crow's Nest, which is also exciting. I'm really happy to see more towns, more things like that are coming to exist in this game, and I think that's a great addition. And I mean, back onto the Nomura thing, I just don't think it's fair to put all or 100% of the blame, as a lot of people typically do. I'm not saying you guys specifically, but there are some people I see in comments often where they'll basically just say stuff like, oh, typical Nomura, or typical Nomura nonsense, or typical like Kingdom Hearts like garbage. Like, you know, I've seen these comments a lot throughout the year since I've been doing this, and I don't know what else to tell you guys or tell those specific individuals. And even Katase said as much. Nomura's been the one that's been aiming and trying and fighting to keep the game's story very similar and not straying off the path from the OG. Whatever he may have done with Kingdom Hearts and other titles and other games that he works on, I'm not sure. I don't really have a comment on that. I haven't really dissected and jumped that far into Kingdom Hearts. I've tried, but I just couldn't do it. And it's a shame. I still would have really loved to see him fully bring his Versus 13 to life. Had a really cool aesthetic and had some pretty cool promise too. We all know, of course, that chopped up pieces of that ended up becoming Final Fantasy 15, and he wasn't directly involved with that project either. But what's really cool is that the VRM Rex storyline, which again, I don't know how that plays into Kingdom Hearts, seems to be keeping alive a lot of the symbolism or a lot of the imagery that he was aiming for with Versus 13 in VRM Rex. So if that becomes its own thing eventually later on, I'm happy for the guy. I love the scenes with Seto. I love the scenes with Dyne, but I am really excited to see what new moments they implement or introduce into the game that eventually just out of nowhere surprises us and steals our heart. Fingers crossed there is some. I would love to hear what you guys think about that in the comments below. Be sure to like the video if you enjoyed and subscribe if you are new. More Final Fantasy videos are on the way and you don't want to miss them. My name is Blitz and thanks for watching.